The chamber of the Galactic Council of Concordant Species was built for awe. Floating thousands of meters above the shimmering oceans of Vorthan Prime, its ceiling dissolved into a canopy of transparent energy glass, revealing the slow ballet of distant nebulae. Delegates from 63 species hovered or stood around a circular dais, their voices murmuring like low thunder. And at the center, an image pulsed, a three-dimensional hologram of a blue-green planet, Earth. It had been a long time since humanity was the topic of such urgent discussion. Item 47, droned the council recorder, a pale, tendril-faced Thunari whose voice carried a metallic reverb. The incident at Tau Ceti 4. Reports suggest unconventional human behavior during the ceasefire. A ripple went through the crowd, an audible mixture of curiosity and unease. High Chancellor Ziath Vel of the Kordan Empire raised a chitinous hand. Unconventional, it hissed. The footage shows a massacre. They were outnumbered 20 to 1. Yet, none survived on the opposing side. None. The hologram flickered. A new feed appeared, shaky, black box footage from a Krell battleship's observation drone. The council chamber fell silent. Through the haze of plasma and smoke, armored human soldiers could be seen sprinting across a blasted landscape, moving low, coordinated, silent. The audio captured ragged breathing, interspersed with words the translator couldn't process. Then came the shift. One soldier, his visor cracked, his weapon out of charge, stopped, exhaled, and stared into the drone's lens. For a brief second, his eyes were visible through the blood-smeared glass. They were calm. Too calm. Computer, freeze frame, ordered Counselor Gel, a serpentine representative from the Koren Dominion. The image locked. In those eyes, Gel whispered, "I see no panic. Only focus. The kind that belongs to apex predators. It is unsettling." From the upper gallery, Ambassador Ariana Solis of Earth folded her arms. "You call it unsettling," she said, her tone even, "we call it instinct." A dozen alien eyes turned toward her. Instinct. Ziath Vel clicked. Your troops executed a coordinated counteroffensive without command authorization, under psychological and physical collapse. The neural metrics recorded during the event are impossible: no fear response, no hesitation, complete synchronization without comms explain that. Ariana's expression didn't change. Because you've never seen what happens when a human stops thinking and starts surviving. The council chamber murmured louder. One delegate, a massive, furred Brannock general, grunted. "We have all been under pressure, human. We've all fought wars. What you describe defies reason." Ariana leaned forward slightly. "General, you mistake reason for instinct. Most species train to fight. Humans evolved to hunt." The lights dimmed as the holo replayed the footage. The soldiers moved like a swarm, but not chaotic, coordinated by something deeper than orders. They were silent, efficient, merciless. A predator pack operating beyond communication, a neural dance older than civilization. Ziatha's voice broke through the tension. "Ambassador, your predator mode, as your files call it, is this a weaponized state? A form of augmentation?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine. Ariana hesitated, then sighed. "It's not a weapon. It's an inheritance. Buried deep in the human brain, remnants from a time when survival meant tracking, cornering, killing. You can't command it. You can only trigger it. Once it's awake." She paused, meeting every alien gaze in the room. "It doesn't stop until the threat is gone." The silence that followed was almost sacred. From the shadows, the archivist of Velna, a species known for its perfect memory, spoke softly. "We have observed similar states in primitive predators, adrenaline-driven aggression, pack behavior. But this is collective cognition without telepathic link. An emergent phenomenon." Gel hissed quietly. "A monster that thinks together." Ariana smiled faintly. "No, Counselor. A species that remembers what it's capable of." An aide floated forward, placing a data core on the podium. It projected bioscans from the Tau Ceti survivors. Their heart rates had surged to lethal levels, yet their neural patterns synchronized in rhythm. Cortisol spikes, pain suppression, sensory enhancement, but the key variable was empathy suppression. The brain's emotional centers went dark. Every decision became a tactical calculation. Predator mode, whispered Ziath. It is evolution's war algorithm. The chamber's lights dimmed again, this time showing an older archive, ancient human hunts, archived footage of wolves, lions, falcons, and finally, human warriors through history, bronze swords, rifles, mechsuits. The pattern was constant, unity under pressure, savagery under fear. Ariana walked to the center of the council dais. When your fleets panic, your soldiers scatter. When ours panic, something else happens. We get calm. She let the words sink in. And when that calm spreads through a unit, you don't get soldiers anymore. You get a species acting as one organism. You get predators. A faint chime signaled incoming transmission. The holo above flickered again, this time, live footage. A Council Recon ship, orbiting the human border system of Epsilon Prime, was broadcasting a distress signal. Static, then a voice. This is Scout Vessel Echelon 3, we have visual on an unregistered conflict zone. Multiple human vessels, unmarked, engaging raider ships. No communications detected, no IFF tags. There. The voice cut off. The chamber filled with the sound of pulsefire, screams, and static. Then the feed stabilized, the camera zoomed in on 3 human ships moving in perfect formation, cutting through enemy squadrons like surgical blades. There was no radio chatter. No light signals. Just movement, flawless, terrifying, instinctive. Ariana didn't flinch. There it is, she said softly. In real time. The council watched as one human ship was crippled, its engines blown apart, its hull spinning. But instead of retreating, the remaining 2 altered course, simultaneously, moving to shield their wounded ally. No orders, no command signals. Just action. A collective heartbeat. And then, the impossible, the crippled ship reignited its engines, ramming into the largest raider cruiser, sacrificing itself in a blinding explosion. The feed went dark. When the light returned to the chamber, nobody spoke. Even Ziatha's mandibles twitched soundlessly. Ariana's voice was barely above a whisper. You wanted to see Predator mode awaken before your eyes. Now you have. She turned toward the massive windows overlooking the galaxy. You should remember this moment. Because what you just witnessed isn't a weapon. It's a warning. The rain came down in sheets, hissing against superheated armor. Private Jonas Hale crouched behind the shattered hull of a transport, his breathing shallow inside the cracked seal of his helmet. Plasma bolts cut through the air, turning sand into molten glass. Around him, the battlefield on Epsilon Prime was chaos, a fractured canyon of smoke, wreckage, and screams. Command's gone dark, Corporal Myra Chen muttered through static. Her visor flickered, half fried by shrapnel. No comms. No drones. We're blind. Jonas glanced at his HUD, nothing but static interference and a pulsing red line marking enemy proximity. Thousands of raider signatures. We're not making it out, he said flatly. Speak for yourself, Myra shot back, checking the last mag of her pulse rifle. We're Marines. We don't die easy. From the horizon, the enemy's war engines crawled forward, spiked monstrosities built from scrap metal and stolen tech. The humans' own artillery was silent, their orbiting fleet destroyed hours ago. A soft tone in Jonas's earpiece broke through the static, not a command signal, but something older, something deeper. A tone that every human soldier had been trained to fear and respect. Code Gray, no retreat. No command. Operate on instinct. It was the unspoken signal that separated humanity from everyone else. The first wave hit like thunder. Dozens of plasma mortars screamed through the clouds, detonating across the trench. Jonas was thrown backward, armor sizzling. His ears rang, muffled cries and burning ozone filling his senses. When he blinked the dust from his eyes, he saw Myra pulling 2 wounded men to cover, her movements sharp, precise, too precise. Jonas felt something in the air, a shift. Like the world itself inhaled. The fear, the chaos, the screaming, it didn't fade, it reorganized. Something deep in the human brain stirred. The part evolution had buried beneath reason and civilization. The part that remembered what it was like to stalk mammoths with spears and to survive nights when every sound meant death. His heart rate slowed. The noise dimmed. He saw everything with a new clarity, the flicker of plasma arcs, the pulse of enemy muzzles, the rhythm of their reloads. He could feel the breath of those beside him syncing with his own. He wasn't thinking anymore. He was calculating. Myra turned, her eyes visible through the cracked visor. Calm. Unblinking. She didn't speak, but Jonas understood. Move left. 2 flanks. Ambush. No words needed. They broke from cover, sprinting low through the firestorm. Every movement was a conversation of glances and gestures. One soldier threw a grenade, another covered the advance. They flowed as one, perfect synchronization, no command net, no hesitation. The raiders weren't ready. A dozen fell before they could reorient. Jonas's rifle overheated, but his hands were already drawing his sidearm. His breathing was steady, his vision razor-sharp. It wasn't rage. It wasn't adrenaline. It was focus. Predator mode. Somewhere, above the smoke-filled sky, the Galactic Council watched this through a surviving drone feed. The image trembled, zoomed in on the humans advancing in a formation no manual had ever taught. They didn't break when surrounded. They tightened. The enemy's numerical advantage vanished under the precision of human brutality. Each kill was deliberate, throat, joint, eye. They hunted like wolves, one moving, one covering, one finishing. Every time a human fell, 2 replaced them. No screams, no panic. Only movement, seamless, fluid, silent. Back on the ground, Jonas ducked beneath a collapsing wall. Myra landed beside him, her armor scorched, blood dripping from her temple. "We need to fall back to the ridge," she said automatically. But her tone was wrong. Flat. Devoid of emotion. Jonas realized his own voice sounded the same. "We can't. Too many hostiles. Nearest extraction is." He stopped. His eyes flicked upward. Through the dust, a signal flare streaked, blue. That wasn't theirs. It came from behind enemy lines. A human flare. Someone alive out there. Without thinking, they moved. They crossed a no-man's land littered with debris, stepping over corpses, human and alien alike. A plasma bolt grazed Jonas's shoulder. He didn't react. His body moved on autopilot, fueled by centuries of encoded survival. The air hummed with energy, each sense sharpened to near-painful precision. When they reached the source of the flare, they found Lieutenant Rafik, pinned under a collapsed drone chassis. His leg was shattered, his pulse rifle broken. "Sir, extraction's impossible," Myra said flatly. "Orders." Rafik looked up at them, at their blank, unwavering expressions. He swallowed. "You're in it, aren't you?" Jonas blinked. "In what, sir?" "The mode," Rafik whispered. "You're all in it now." The next wave came before they could answer, dozens of raider infantry surging through the canyon. Jonas didn't need orders. Neither did Myra. The 3 humans moved as one. Rafik, despite his wound, propped up the broken rifle and laid down cover fire. Myra sprinted across the open field, sliding behind a wreck and taking down 4 enemies in a blur. Jonas scaled a rock wall, switching to knife combat when his ammo ran dry. Time fractured into moments. A plasma blade slashed toward him. He ducked, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and used its momentum to impale it on its own weapon. Blood sprayed, sizzling in the rain. No hesitation. No mercy. Just survival. Above them, the sky roared. A human gunship, long thought destroyed, came streaking through the clouds, its pilot broadcasting no signal, its hull scarred. It dove straight into the raider lines, unleashing autocannon fire that tore through armor like tissue. Rafik's voice came through the local comms. "They shouldn't even be here, they're acting on their own initiative." Myra reloaded without looking up. No, sir. They're acting like us. The gunship banked, looped around, and crashed deliberately into a Raider heavy transport, creating a shockwave that leveled half the field. Even crippled, humanity fought like a cornered beast. By the time the smoke cleared, the Raiders had retreated, or what was left of them. The humans didn't cheer, didn't speak. They simply regrouped, checking each other's wounds mechanically, efficiently. Jonas looked around. His armor was scorched, his weapon gone, his breath steady. He felt nothing. Not fear, not relief. Just silence. In that stillness, the realization dawned, they hadn't just survived together, they'd become something else. The mode had connected them, stripped them down to their most primal selves, turning individuals into a single organism driven by one purpose, victory. Miles above, the Council's observation feed finally went black as the drone melted in the blast. But not before capturing the last image. 3 humans standing shoulder to shoulder in the rain, eyes calm, weapons raised toward the retreating enemy, silent, unyielding, unstoppable. The Council chamber on Vorthen Prime had not been this silent in a century. The massive holographic screens above the dais flickered with static, the last fragments of the Epsilon Prime feed dissolving into nothingness. All that remained was the echo of humanity's final transmission, no words, no cries, just that dreadful calm as they fought until the very end. Chancellor Ziath Vel was the first to speak, his mandibles twitching. "This cannot be allowed to stand," he rasped. "That was not battle. That was extermination." Ambassador Ariana Solis of Earth stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the still glowing remnants of the hologram. "Extermination," she said softly. "They were defending their colony from pirates." Ziatha's claws dug into the crystalline table. "Defending? You call vaporizing an entire Raider armada defense? They turned their own ship into a bomb." "Because it worked," Ariana replied. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. And because no one else would have survived that fight. The chamber erupted in shouts. Councillor Gel of the Koren Dominion hissed loud enough to cut through the noise. "Your species is dangerous beyond comprehension. You do not wage war, you become it." From across the table, the Velnari archivist raised a trembling hand. "Perhaps it was self-preservation, yet I fear this instinct cannot be contained. If such a state can be triggered once, it can be triggered again." Ziath slammed a clawed fist against the console. "You don't understand what we just witnessed. Their biology is not built for control. This predator mode is contagion, one that could spread to every battlefield they touch. Today they destroyed raiders. Tomorrow? Perhaps a council fleet." Ariana exhaled slowly. "We've existed for centuries alongside you. If we wanted conquest, we'd have started long before the council ever met us." The Koren delegate hissed again. "Don't patronize us, human. You think your restraint makes you civilized. It only makes you patient." The words struck like a blade through the air. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the life support vents filled the void. Finally, the Brannock general, an enormous, fur-covered being with eyes like polished stone, leaned forward. His voice was low, rough, but not hostile. "I fought beside humans on the Arcturian front," he said. "When the Lothran took our command center, I watched a human medic tear open an enemy tank with nothing but explosives and a medkit. You call it madness. I call it instinct to win." Ziath sneered. "And when that instinct turns on you, General? When they decide you're in their way?" The Brannock bared his teeth. "Then I will die knowing I stood beside the only species that never runs." The council recorder's voice interrupted, mechanical and cold. Motion on the floor, discussion of sanctions on Terran military operations beyond Sol. Proposal submitted by the Kordan Empire. The chamber's hololights shifted to red, emergency vote pending. Ariana's composure cracked just slightly. "Sanctions," she repeated. "For surviving." Gel turned to her, unblinking. "For terrifying the galaxy." Beyond the chamber, news feeds across the galaxy replayed the footage endlessly. Civilians on distant worlds watched, horrified and fascinated, as humans fought like living weapons, coordinated, relentless, unstoppable. Across social channels and holocausts, a new term began circulating: the Quiet Hunters. On fringe colonies, children whispered it with awe. On border worlds, militias whispered it with fear. And on the Council's encrypted military networks, analysts gave it a new code name: Homo Bellata, the Warborn. As the vote continued, small groups of delegates whispered in private channels. Some called for containment. Some called for alliance. None called for trust. At the center of it all, Ariana Solis stood alone. Her personal data link vibrated, an encrypted message from Earth Command. She glanced at the display, reading the short text. Confirmed survival. Epsilon Prime forces returning. Do not disclose. Her heart stilled. They're alive. But she didn't smile. If the Council knew survivors existed, they'd see it as proof that Predator mode wasn't a desperate fluke, but a weapon humanity could wield again. Meanwhile, in the observation deck above the Council floor, Archivist Tivan of Velna watched silently. Its photonic eyes shimmered as it analyzed the data from the battle, replaying the neurological telemetry the humans had transmitted. It spoke quietly into its recorder. Pattern detected: mass synchronization across independent human neural networks during extreme threat. Behavioral cohesion ratio exceeds 0.92. Probability of external telepathic interference, 0%. Probability of evolutionary emergence, 100%. It hesitated, then added one more note. Conclusion: humanity is not a collective mind. They are a collective instinct. Back on the Council floor, the vote concluded. Resolution passed, the recorder intoned. By majority decision, all Terran fleet deployments beyond their recognized territories are suspended pending review. Unauthorized operations to be treated as rogue actions subject to neutralization. Ariana's jaw clenched. You're cutting us off from our own colonies. You're sentencing millions of civilians to fend for themselves. Gel's tail coiled, scales glinting under the light. We are ensuring peace. Peace. Ariana's eyes flashed. Peace built on fear isn't peace at all, it's preparation for surrender. She looked around the room, her voice lowering to something dangerously calm. You watched humans fight when they were cornered and dying. Pray you never see what happens when we're ready and alive. The Council adjourned in silence. Delegates filed out, whispering in hushed tones. Above them, the great chamber's dome shimmered with reflected starlight, the same stars that now feared their human inhabitants. Only the Velnari archivist lingered, recording one last observation. The awakening of the Terran Predator is not merely biological. It is cultural. A myth reborn in blood and data. The Council believes they witnessed a monster rise, but perhaps they witnessed a god remembering its purpose. Far away, in the orbit of Epsilon Prime, the surviving human gunship Valkyrie drifted through debris. Inside, Jonas Hale stared out at the wreckage, unblinking. Jonas, Myra's voice broke the silence. We're heading home. He nodded slowly. Home. But neither of them moved. Outside, lightning danced across the planet's storms, and for a moment, the reflection in the viewport showed their faces, calm, empty, still locked in that state. The mode hadn't faded yet. It was just waiting. 3 days after the vote, the Galactic Council's sanctions against humanity spread through the stars like wildfire. Trade networks collapsed overnight. Supply lines to human frontier colonies went dark. Every Terran vessel that crossed the border was shadowed by drones. Officially, it was containment. Unofficially, it was fear. And fear, humanity knew, had a scent. The silence of Sol. From the orbiting city of Elysium Station, high above Earth, Admiral Rear Anselm watched as the last alien convoy left Terran space. Their engines burned blue against the black void, retreating lights of a galaxy that had decided humanity was too dangerous to coexist with. Status of diplomatic channels? She asked, her tone quiet. Closed, replied the comms officer. All frequencies jammed beyond Luna's orbit. Council insists on temporary isolation. Rhea turned toward the viewport. Earth rotated below, calm, blue, innocent. Temporary, she repeated. That's what they always say before they build a wall. Her aide hesitated. The colonies are already responding. Epsilon Prime survivors are en route. Titan Command requests orders. Rhea's expression hardened. We don't retaliate. Not yet. She walked closer to the window, her reflection merging with the planet below. The galaxy fears us because they've seen what happens when we stop pretending to be civilized. But they've never seen what happens when we choose to be deliberate. Whispers among the stars. In the weeks that followed, alien networks filled with speculation. Were humans building new weapons? Were they preparing for war? Had the predator mode become their new religion? But no answers came. Human ships stopped transmitting identification codes. Their colonies went dark. Outposts powered down their beacons. It was as if the entire species had disappeared. Yet deep space sensors occasionally caught ghost signals, heat signatures of fleets moving silently through the void, never broadcasting, never attacking. They were watching. The Council in panic. On Vorthan Prime, the Council reconvened in emergency session. The atmosphere was thick with unease. Holoscreens displayed grainy images of human fleets moving with impossible coordination, no chatter, no signals, no visible command structure. Ziath Vel slammed a clawed hand on the table. You said they were contained. Their fleets are moving across unclaimed sectors. Zhel flicked her tail nervously. And yet, they've attacked no one. No raids, no incursions. Nothing. The Brannock general grunted. That's what worries me. The archivist of Velna floated forward, its photonic eyes dimming to a deep violet. I have analyzed their transmissions. Every signal carries a shared encryption, simple, old, but universal. It is not military code. Then what is it? Asked Ziath. The archivist hesitated. It is music. The Song of Hunters. Across the void, a pattern began to emerge, low-frequency pulses emanating from human colonies, synchronized like a heartbeat. The signals formed a rhythm, an ancient pattern that predated the stars themselves. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder. The pattern matched old Terran distress codes from pre-spaceflight history, the rhythmic beat once used to say, "We survive." Over time, the pulses spread beyond Terran space. Merchant ships passing near human borders reported hearing it through their hulls, a vibration that resonated not in their ears, but in their bones. Some crews claimed to hear whispers buried in the signal. We remember. We wait. We hunt. The Council tried to jam it. The signal adapted. They tried to trace it. It came from everywhere, and nowhere. A living echo, born of millions acting with one will. Humanity's message. A week later, a single Terran transmission reached every Council world simultaneously. The message was untraceable, originating from at least 50 different locations, perfectly synchronized. The screen lit up with the face of Ambassador Ariana Solis. Her voice was calm, her expression unreadable. To the Council of Concordant Species, she began. You have seen us fight when trapped. You have seen what happens when instinct takes over. You called it monstrous. You called it dangerous. She leaned forward slightly. You were right. The chamber froze. But understand this, that instinct you fear isn't rage. It's not bloodlust. It's unity. You fear what you can't control because, deep down, you know it's what you lost. We remember what you forgot, to adapt, to endure, to stand together when everything else falls apart. Her gaze hardened. You sanctioned us. You isolated us. You made us your enemy not because we attacked you, but because we reminded you what strength looks like. The holo zoomed out, revealing not just Ariana, but hundreds of humans across different stations, ships, and colonies, all speaking in unison. We are humanity. We are the sum of every survivor that refused extinction. And if the stars themselves turn against us. Their voices merged into one, amplified by the transmission grid. Then the stars will burn before we bow. The signal cut. The aftermath. The silence that followed stretched across the galaxy. On distant worlds, citizens watched the broadcast in disbelief. Some were afraid. Others were inspired. Within days, frontier colonies began flying Terran flags in solidarity. Alien mercenaries who once fought beside humans refused Council orders to stand against them. Even among the Council species, whispers grew, maybe humanity wasn't dangerous. Maybe they were just free. But fear is stubborn. And power hates what it can't dominate. So the Council prepared for war. The calm before the return. Back on Earth, Admiral Rear Anselm stood on the deck of Elysium Station, watching as hundreds of ships powered up, silent, black-armored, bearing no emblems. Each one was crewed by men and women who had lived through the Awakening, soldiers who now moved with that same uncanny unity, their minds steady, their pulses calm. Jonas Hale and Myra Chen were among them, faces unreadable as they sealed their helmets. "Orders, Admiral?" a lieutenant asked. Rear's lips curved faintly. "No orders. Just intent." "Intent, She looked out toward the galaxy, vast, glittering, unaware of what was coming. "Intent to survive," she said. "And to remind them that humanity doesn't need permission to exist." The final transmission. The Council's deep space sensors detected a single transmission before the human fleets vanished beyond the rim. A voice, quiet, resolute, unmistakably human. "You feared our predator mode. But that wasn't our power. Our power is that when the darkness comes, we become the light." Then silence. No one knew where the human fleets went. Some said they found a new world beyond the galactic rim. Others believed they were waiting, watching, in the cold void between stars. But every now and then, across the quiet reaches of the galaxy, the old pulse could still be felt, the rhythm that meant we survive. And whenever it echoed, every species that heard it remembered the day the Galactic Council watched humanity's predator mode awaken, and realized it had never truly gone back to sleep.